These are the voyages of this podcast enterprise. Its continuing mission to explore strange new video games, to seek out new life and new video game communities, to boldly go where most other video game podcasts have gone before. But it's us, so it's better and good.
It's different. It's different,
right?
It's different.
That's what we're gonna tell ourselves.
I mean, I'm biased because I think we're interesting. So, I mean, I am. I'm like, I do think it's fun to hear people talk about video games, but I also admit that I don't want to hear everyone talk about video games.
What is it about a writer, a YouTuber, a Twitcher, a podcaster? What's going to hook you? Is it the genre fascination? Is it the personality? Where do you go?
I think for me, my most enjoyable video game conversations are probably people who are interested in it as a storytelling medium and people who are really deeply captured by stories. Because I, being a storyteller, naturally drawn to that element. Like a person could sit and talk to me for 3 hours about their Halo strategies and I would be like bored to tears. But someone else would be absolutely delighted. So it's like, it's like that, basically.
Yep. I have dipped in and out of so many podcasts that are about the specific like obsessive game that I am playing at the time, and then when you lose touch with that game, it's interesting that you lose touch with the content creators too, in a way. And then there's other broader shows that I love pretty religiously, but I been thinking a lot about this stuff. I always do, in our jobs and stuff, but been thinking about why do people attach themselves to certain things on the internet? What is it? Is it the shared obsession, or is it just a love of that personality?
Yeah.
And I know it's often a mix of those things, but I'm me, I'm mildly obsessed with that.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I have, a certain body of experience, right? It's limited, but like my experience, I think, has pretty much been like, the most passionate, reactions that I ever got from people were folks who listened to Retro Force Go, 13, 14 years ago. And they were like, we just love you guys.
Yeah.
So it's like, we talked about stuff, of course, but it's really, I don't know. I find that really, it's interesting to me. Like I still to this day, I think I'm kind of bamboozled by why they loved us so much specifically.
Because it was a great show, and also we talked about this a lot. You all were early to the games, and also like it was one of the first, like, we're just all hanging out, being friends, geeking out about stuff that we all enjoy, and that is what the internet didn't know it needed. That and you and others at the time were starting to provide it, and now it's almost like the default. The way that fandom is arranged on the internet.
Right? No, totally. It's weird. It's super weird to me, right? To like look back and be like, we were doing a thing that we're like was ahead that we did not even have any idea was ahead. Which is awesome. Yep. Like I love the feeling of looking back at that and remembering that I didn't know.
There's an innocence and there's a purity in that too. That's really special. Yeah. I think about any media that you care about. You're still talking about it, thinking about it, trying to connect with it. Maybe it's just a movie you saw one time, or maybe it's a game you spent 100 hours in. Podcasts have that. And YouTube and all these other platforms. They have that power
what?
too.
I really tell you what, though, I wish that passion had translated into like becoming full-time content creators then, because I think that would have been a blast. But, I look around me now and then I'm like, well, it's a great wish. But then you look at some content creators and you hear about their stress and you hear about their issues and you're just like, and I'm like, be careful what you wish for, basically.
It's just so hard because the economics of the internet really don't make it possible for most people. Even if they have large, loyal audiences, you still have to be a salesperson and a biz dev manager and a marketer.
Yeah, and you just have to do so much. Like, so I have this friend. He's a streaming friend, very good friend. And when I met him, he was, of course, doing his stream quite a few times a week. And then on top of that, he was kind of, posting on his social media. And I think at the time he had like Instagram, and he used Twitter lightly, but more Instagram. And then at some point he was like, oh, I gotta like get into Patreon. And so like, I helped him out a little bit with like talking about his Patreon and envisioning that. And then like he kept trying to figure things out, and he was like, okay, well, now I have to figure out what unique content to put on the Patreon that's not featured on the stream. So that's over here. But then we have this. Also, I really need to build my YouTube channel. And I was like, I want to die.
Yeah.
Because my level of overwhelm, I'm so easily overwhelmed as a person. So it was just like, holy fucking shit. Like, it overwhelmed me. And I was like, and it is his full-time job. Okay. So like that part of it is like, okay, still overwhelming, but it's your full-time job. Cool. I get it. But yeah, just wow.
But he had to cross over. He had to put in that work to cross over into that full-time thing. And then the Patreon tightrope is also really fascinating and overwhelming to me as well, because like you said, you got to create you don't have to do anything. You could just say, throw me $1 and so I can eat. That's, I like that. I'm not interested in getting perks from the people I support on Patreon. I just want their shows to keep existing. That's it.
Sure.
But I understand that I'm not the normal, right?
No, so I mean, I think you might be surprised actually, like that. Funny enough, that would actually be a great article idea, like to talk about like the reasons that people support and like, what, like talk to a whole bunch of Patreon supporters and like understand their reasons for like financially donating to the people they support.
I talked to a wonderful podcaster recently who had concerns that her Patreon supporters for the show were expecting too much, meaning they felt entitled to dictate the direction of the conversation of the show, and I think sometimes that's really important for the audience to be part of it.
Yeah.
I love that, but they're not in charge. So there's a little bit of a tightrope there, but and she and I were talking exactly that the issue you were describing with your friend, which is like, Patreon's so important. I love it. It's this PBS model. We want it to exist, and we're going to do the perks. But like, then I have to do 3x more work to create the perks, the bonus content, the extra tweets, the whatever it is. And at first, you may not have enough support on Patreon to make those hours worth your time.
Exactly.
So you want to reward those people. You love those people. They're your bread and butter. But it's just too much damn work to, in addition to the full-time work you're already doing to make stuff. So I applaud anyone who's figured that out. I presume most of it has just been like, I just killed myself for 3 years until I balanced all the scales, and now I can finally, pay the bills with Patreon or plus merch, plus advertising, whatever the equation is.
I forgot. Speaking of the friend, at some point he was also like, "Yeah, I'm going to do merch, so let's talk about merch." And he's like, "Well, let's use Teespring." And like we started talking. We have a lot of conversations about this stuff, but I was just like, oh my God, like
it's so much.
It's so much. And I was just like, God, this kills me. This really does kill me. So, yeah.
And I don't know what's better. I don't know what version of art or show business is better. Like the hire me, I'll audition or be an intern or whatever in the trenches, and then get paid nothing, and then get abused by the system and taken advantage of by your managers or your agents. All the the bullshit that circles around people who are skilled or talented. Like the world wants to take advantage of you, and you hear this with musicians and everything, record labels and all that. Like that machinery is also bullshit. So I like the self-determinism of the internet a lot more, but I also recognize that it is just like you are your own agent and business manager. You don't have anyone to help you with anything, and I just find it really fascinating. I
Yeah.
love those. I love hearing from creators about this stuff
I
too.
do too.
Like your friend.
I do too, because I think it's so easy, right, to like look at, people who are succeeding or, perceived to be succeeding, right? And I think it's so easy to look at that and be like, oh, like they've made it, like my friend really wanted to make Partner for a long time. And, he had friends that made Partner and, like just stuff like that. He was
Twitch?
like, oh yeah, I don't, yes. And
Okay.
so, yeah, like I think it was, it was interesting, right? It was like, oh, they're doing this. And then I might have mentioned this to you, but like I read this, what I thought was like a just fascinating article. I believe it was New York Times, but it was basically about a guy who was making, just an enormous amount of money on Twitch, and he literally didn't want to stop streaming to eat.
Right.
He didn't have time to be able to do that. So he like paid his mom to be his chef, and he paid her a lot of money.
Wow.
Because he was making the money, right?
Right.
But it's like, they talked to him pretty candidly, and I thought that he sounded, to be quite honest, kind of miserable.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, if I stop, then all this stops, and all this money stops. But then you get to the point where you're like, well, none of this is stuff that I've really come to the point of being able to like answer. It's complex.
Right. It's because you are an independent entity. It's like being an Uber driver and then you get sick one day and it's like, well, if I don't drive the car today, I will not make money. It's not there's no safety nets, obviously. And that's a whole, I mean, that is another trajectory of the conversation about burnout and success and everything. But I'm also very fascinated with like, hey, you said, oh, I made Twitch Partner, and people think, wow, this guy or gal's got it made. It's like, okay, well, I'm streaming live. Even let's say you have 500 viewers who are like always there. That's a lot of people. Like 500 views on a YouTube video. Okay, like that's that's not a living. But 500 people tuning in live to watch you. That's an amazing achievement. Full stop.
I agree.
And your Twitch Partner and and it's like, and what are you making? 12 cents for like how much money could you possibly be making from that?
Yeah, that's exactly the other piece. And I think that is another conversation onto itself, right? But yeah, it's like, the majority of people are just not making.
There's just not enough money and eyeballs to go around. I mean, the eyeballs are there theoretically, but there's just not enough business to go around.
I agree.
It's, again, it's like dreaming of being a rock star. You're a kid, right? You dream of being a rock star or an NBA player. And you may, as a kid, you may or may not know, but your parents know intellectually that there's like a 1% of 1% chance that you will be a successful, like whatever you want to be, NBA star, right? And then now you have kids growing up with today's internet where it's like everyone's doing everything and everyone's an influencer. And that's cool, but like it's still only 1% of 1% who are like, yes, this is my full-time living and I'm really making real good money to support me and myself and my family, or I'm growing a business. Like that's, you can try and here's the tragedy. You can reach millions of people and think that you're onto something and still not make it. That's the difference. Because like if you don't get in the NBA, you are not in the NBA and you're not in the NBA. But you can be on a platform and be like, I got millions watching me. Why aren't I rich or paying rent? And that disconnect is very interesting and strange to our culture. I mean, it's certainly fascinating to me, but I think it's a weird disconnect we have in our media culture right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And another piece I think to it too is that I feel as if I saw and heard from a lot of people who are like, really talented and just doing terrific things. And like you said, like not necessarily seeing, success that they feel that will make sense, right? I should be successful because I've put all these pieces in. And so, I think then, you start to see that really start to fragment their self-esteem. And that is really huge, because I think that no matter what kind of attitude you have, it's really hard not to be affected by that. Like long term, I don't, to not take it personally. I mean, you would have to just be an ironclad person with an incredibly healthy sense of self-esteem. And that's very rare.
Yes, exactly. Right. An extremely talented prodigy genius person who just can't take the 500th rejection or the $0 from Google AdSense again, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. It's like, how, what do you do with that? So.
It's sad. It's sad. This idea that like the internet is littered, like bad content is bad content. And that's, that sucks, but we have to just get past that, I guess. As a, if you're not good at something, you can make a choice to get better or quit. And that's its own thing. But to be amazing or great or have value to lots of people and still not cut it, that is sad. And not to get, not that this is like super political, but like I'm a big fan of like socialist programs like basic income, where it's like we have enough. If we just buy a few less bombs and tanks, we could probably just make sure that everyone in a given country could have food and their rent paid and the basic necessities, right? So that they don't die. And from there, you could do whatever you want. You want to work in an office, you want to start a company, you want to do just whatever you want to do to gain more wealth, great. But imagine if your rent and food was paid for, no questions asked, forever.
Yeah.
Then you could stream to 500 people and that's your life. And those 500 people would love you, you'd love it. And there would be you could make money if you want to hustle and spin up the merch machine, God bless you. But you don't have to do that to eat.
Right.
Think of all the art and things we would have. And we have a lot of it, but it's filled with heartbreak. And imagine a creative world that was not so heartbreaky. I hope we could go to a future. We could move towards a future, like a economic and political future like that. Maybe not in our lifetime, given certain circumstances, but
it would be nice.
I like that.
It is something I also think about, and it's funny you bring this up actually, because I watched a movie last night in which a fairly young character who decides to backpack like very much on a whim goes to Italy, and he is working for an Italian farmer, and he's just looking for a job, and he finds the farmer is seeking someone, and so he ends up there for a little while, and I said to my husband, I was like, wow, like that would be just so cool to, it made me kind of fantasize about the idea of like, oh, wow. Like, can you imagine how cool it would be to be able to like walk away from like, your life that you spend in front of a computer and go do something like put your fucking life in a backpack and go to Italy and work in on a farm. Like, wow. But, also I guess I definitely feel like, I don't know, like those are human experiences that would be incredible to have. And like, I don't really feel like we're meant to be here to necessarily just work until we retire and then die.
Right.
Which this has nothing to do with video games anymore.
No, but yeah, I love thinking about this stuff, because it's like the stuff that was usually reserved for hippies. I forget what it's called, like woofing or hoofing or something. It is like, yep, I just went to a farm and said, hey, you need any help? And you'll pay me with room and board and I'll live on this farm.
Oh, I didn't know it had a name. So that's exactly what happened to the character in the movie.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
And yeah, that could be a human experience that anyone could access.
Wow.
It is whatever it is. It doesn't have to be go to a farm. It's like whatever you want to do. We live in a society that is so futuristic and enlightened that we can achieve that.
It's so cool.
We have it. We have the capital and the resources to do it today. We just don't want to do it. We don't have the will to structure our society that way. Which is interesting.
Yeah, it is. Man. Wow. Video games.
That's our show. We'll talk to you next week. Let's get into it.
Our listenership are like, what?
What did I tune into?
What the fuck is happening here? Yeah.
This is number 2 of our top 5 of all time. Should we recap?
Yeah, why not?
Let's do it. Your number 5, of course.
My number 5 was... Wow, I literally just went blank. Okay, hold on.
I know it.
My number 5 was The Legend of Zelda for NES.
Yes.
My number 4 was Final Fantasy 7, and my number 3 was Final Fantasy 10.
Yeah, and I loved our conversation last week about 10, and I was checking out trailers and reviews and stuff. It looks really nice on Switch. Like it looks like it runs really well.
It's beautiful
and looks pretty tidy.
Yeah, it's
graphically speaking,
really pretty.
So I'm considering it. For me, number 5 was Final Fantasy 6, followed by Civilization at number 4, and No Man's Sky at number 3, which we talked about last week. So we're at number 2 here. We're getting close to the end. I'm going to let you go first again, and I'm not going to lead you anywhere here, but thinking about what you already have on the list and also thinking about your other proclivities for horror and those type of games, it is the window, the corridor is narrowing here for certain games and titles that I suspect are going to be here. So I'm not going to say predictions, but I'm interested.
You don't want to do predictions?
I mean,
it's okay. We don't have to, but I was just curious.
No, because I don't want to steal thunder away from your big reveal. You know what I mean?
That's totally fair.
Here's what I'll say. This is what we usually do: is like you'll reveal, and then we'll comment, and then you'll go.
Okay. Okay.
Are you prepared?
Yes.
Here is Colette's number 2 most favoriteest video game of all time.
Silent Hill 2.
Yeah.
You were like, I got it. I guessed it. I got it.
I guessed it.
Yay! Yeah. But I guess the question was, would it be number 2 or number 1? What spot would it be? And I mean to say.
I was gonna put it here, but that honestly leaves more questions unanswered about next week. So, but we're not gonna go there yet.
Okay. Well, I mean, my gosh, we've already talked about this game so much on the show. So it's like, I don't really feel like I necessarily am going to be digging deep about something that maybe the people that listen to us haven't already heard, right? But, what I did when I was making my little list is I jotted down just a few words that I associated with each game, the themes that were like the most important to me,
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. For instance, like for Final Fantasy 7, I think I jotted down innovation because for me it was so different. Identity because, you have the story of, Cloud thinking he's one person when in reality he really isn't. Stuff like that, right? And so when I got to Silent Hill 2, what I found myself jotting was trauma. Obviously, this game is full of trauma. I wish I had my list here. I thought I had it next to me, but I don't. Let's see. What else? Denial, like a huge theme in this game to me. And like, inner demons, basically. I still don't think I've ever really played a game that has so perfectly balanced those themes. And like, there's a perfect symmetry of the way that the horror and like the heartbreaking sadness of this game like like if they were on two ends of a seesaw, the seesaw would always be flat.
Okay.
Because to me, those things are so difficult, to intersperse. I mean, if you think about the imagery of Silent Hill, you immediately think about Pyramid Head and you think about these horrible creatures that are disfigured. And, that's really what people think about, when they think about Silent Hill. And so if you think about that, the kind of impressions and reactions we get, as human beings when we see imagery like that, we're revolted, we're disgusted, maybe you're like me and you're fascinated, whatever. And then to think that within the same game that those things existed in, there are also like moments of like really like vulnerable grief and like absolutely like heartbreaking unresolved situations of people's heartbreak. Like the more that I kind of reflect back, and especially having a recent replay last year, the more I reflect back on Silent Hill, the more I feel like Silent Hill 2, the more I feel like the most powerful character in the entire game is actually not James. I think it's Angela. And
that's a
big deal.
The wife, the estranged wife. You have to refresh me.
Yeah, no problem, okay. No problem. So, when James parks and goes into the town, he is on his way down and he finds a graveyard. And when he gets to it, a woman is in the graveyard by herself. That's Angela. Mm-hmm. And her acting the voice actor is a bit weird, I think. But so like her voice is very kind of halting and strange, and the performance is strange. And I always thought, younger, I just thought, wow, this is weird. And then when I got older, I thought this is just not a very good vocal performance. But in reality, I feel like I kind of look at it now and I'm like, actually, if she should sound extremely strange. She should sound extremely different. And so I almost feel like what I thought was once just poor voice acting actually is like perfect for the character. So the TLDR version of this character is that, you meet her and she's like, I'm here in Silent Hill, I'm looking for my mother, and, you're looking for your wife, and, you're like, first she seems kind of withdrawn, but then she kind of quickly like slides to like feeling angry, and she's clearly like discombobulated, like right when you meet her, and you're like, okay. So what you find out, because you encounter her several more times throughout the game, it's not explicitly spelled out, but you can definitely like piece it together from her dialogue and like the story files you find. She grew up with an alcoholic father and a brother who molested and beat her.
Wow.
And her mother refused to help and told her that she deserved the abuse. So this, to me, despite the fact that, like, you have James' like central story, like, to me, her trauma is probably one of the most like, it honestly just like blows me away. Like, even explaining it to you, I'm like, wow, fuck. Right. Like, that's a level that like you just don't really see much of in games,
And also set the stage. This is PS2, and what year are we talking?
Right. Oh gosh, I don't know, and I would have to probably Google that to honestly give you an answer. But I mean, please, old. Go ahead. Right? Old. Yeah. Like. Yeah. So,
2001.
2001. Jesus. Old. So, both she and James are repressing really painful memories, right? But she eventually recalls the truth of what happened, which is she stabbed her father to death in self-defense and fled. So that obviously is like another big piece of it. But there is a ungodly, horrible fight that you have, not because of the intensity of the fight, but just because of the meaning behind it to me, where you have a fight with a boss called Abstract Daddy. I would say it's like maybe about 30% into the game, I suppose. But you're in a room, and the room is like, it's a typical Silent Hill room. Everything's like dark and dirty looking, etc. And the only thing you really can see in the room is this line of like holes that are like probably maybe like head height in the room that go around the whole corner of it. And while you're having this fight, like, you see like something moving in and out of those holes. And the abstract daddy basically, like, this would be really hard for me to explain easily, like without you seeing the design. But basically, the way it looks is that it looks like some sort of like bed, and like there is like what looks like the figure of a man like hunched over the bed with like his face like buried forward. And I guess I think the imagery is that it's her father like bent over on the bed, and then the things moving in the walls are like his penis moving in and out of her.
Wow.
And yeah, so you have to fight that boss, and you kill it. And
as her or as James?
But then she then, right after you finish that boss off, she assaults the dead creature, but like but James tries to offer her like help to help her get up, and like she doesn't want any help from him. And a lot of fans think that like this is because like the truth came really clear to Angela's character in the end about what had happened to her, like the trauma, like denial was kind of broken, so to speak. But like James hasn't accepted the truth about the fact that he killed his wife yet. He doesn't remember. So a lot of fans think that the reason why she like pushes him away is because they're no longer both in denial anymore. But it's funny, right? Because it's like at this point you have this just fucking horrifying thing that's in the middle of this game, a thing that would probably chase most people off, but it's so heartbreaking and it's so tragic. And you think, well, James killed or the creature in Silent Hill that represents her father, as a rapist. Like James killed him, and then after that she came awake, right? So you're thinking like, oh wow, like maybe if you get all that, you're like, well, maybe it's like she conquered it. She was able to face her trauma, right? Well, that's not what happens. So the last time you see Angela, she comes in and out of the game about 5 different times. You just randomly stumble into her in Silent Hill because you're both in this like psychological hell of like experiencing these things that are like haunting you, right? And the last time you see her, you walk into this room, which was prior a different room, and you go back into the room, and what you find there is a staircase that's on fire, and she's standing in front of it, and there are 2 bound male bodies on each side. They represent her father and her brother. And basically she says that like she sees these flames like all the time. And like her, I guess you could, this is not like clearly stated in her dialogue, but to me, it's like pretty clear. She basically like surrenders to the idea that she deserved her abuse. And then she ascends the staircase into the fire, basically like insinuating that she's committing suicide, I guess. And you never see her again. Like, so you don't get any kind of happy ending for her. You don't get any kind of freedom for her, like nothing. She just is this like horribly dark character that you have to feel for because she's like, absolutely bashed in by this kind of like horrible trauma, but like she doesn't really get any freedom from it. So you might be wondering like, why do I love this?
Well, that's an incredible tragedy. That's
it is, but like, do you play?
It's a Shakespearean tragedy.
I mean, yeah, but like, do you really play video games to get into like shit this deep? Like, I mean, most people probably don't. Like, I thought, video games are for entertainment, right? And I mean, I guess you could,
but you watch movies and read books. I mean, like if you only like, happy, rom-coms, then no, you would not want to watch this kind of movie. But yeah, you can.
Yeah, that's fair, I guess. Deeper. I never really thought of it quite that way, but I guess that you're right. I don't know, man. Like, it took me many replays to fully grasp all of the things that I just told you that were happening.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I'm fascinated by, as a kid, it felt this way. And then as an adult, it was like, oh, that's weird. And now, looking back.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think what's important about it, right, is that like, when I reflect back on this particular portion of the story, this person, what happened, I kind of think of it as like, I kind of think of it as like, well, even if you didn't fully understand everything that was going on, even if you were like, oh, I see, like, I think that it was easy to have a feeling. And I think this is art, right? To communicate a feeling where you're like, oh, this is horrible. Like, what's happening here is horrible. Like, maybe you don't fully understand it, but like, whatever it is, it gives you a feeling that you don't have to understand to experience.
Totally.
Right.
Yep.
So I think maybe the first time I was like, this is awful. And then, like, you know, on subsequent, you know, later plays, I was like, oh my God. And like, it just kind of kept going like deeper and deeper and deeper, you know? And then I think in my own adult life, like, as I learned more about like the importance of, you know, childhood and the things that, you know, affect us as kids and how they mold in us, you know, into who we become as adults. I think all this just started to have more and more resonance, and it just really floored me, man. Like, just, it really floored me, and it still really floors me. And, you know, that's not to take away from, you know, how powerful and resonant like James's path is, or, you know, it's just a game that is full of unflinching heartbreak. And it just, I don't know, man. It's unlike anything else I've ever played. Like, and it's so funny to me that like people often reduce it down to just like an image of Pyramid Head, because that's missing so much of the point of what all the things that, you know, the game offers. So, I mean, honestly, I don't know if I'll ever really play a horror game that will ever hit me on this same level. You know, I mean, as game creators, like, it still blows my mind. And the guy that did all the design for all of the monsters, he uses Twitter quite regularly. And so he's great. Like, he'll talk to you about all kinds of stuff about these characters and the things they wanted to do, blah, blah, blah. And like, so I've gotten some really nice insight from him, like, about what, you know, he intended with some of these characters. But like, to me, it kind of blows me away that they had the courage to execute this shit, you know? Because like, if you watch the first, you know, playthrough of the first Silent Hill, it is a good game, but it's nothing like this. Like, the first Silent Hill is like, oh, it's kind of like got some like, you know, Twin Peaks flavor to it, but like there's some really weird shit going on, you know, but like, I mean, I think it's an excellent game. It's nothing like this. Like, there's no other game in the whole series that's even remotely close to this, you know?
Does modern horror games, do they build on this legacy in a meaningful way? Meaning, like, there's obviously horror games that are like, whoa, spooky monster, jump scared, etc. And then there's games that probably are more tense and psychological, and that's cool. But what you are describing here is like, you know, deep explorations of like character trauma and childhood trauma and things, you know, turning that into horror. Like, surely there are worthy successors to this game, or you don't think that there has been since?
I have to really pause and think about that, but my gut feeling is to say no, because if I think about the, you know, really wide variety of stuff I've played, I think that the biggest thing that most horror goes for is atmosphere and for scares. And I think the idea of using trauma as a central theme is much more rare. But I will say this, like, I think that the approach that's here, you're going to see a lot more of it in horror filmmaking. Yes. There's one that springs to mind that I saw, I think, last year. It's a horror film that is about a woman suffering Alzheimer's disease. And her daughter, and how that affects them. It's called Relic. And it has some supernatural elements, but in the end, I think like the true horror of the story is really dementia itself. And there are some just, oh my fucking God, like heartbreaking, like moments that are also so human and, you know, make you kind of, you know, really reflect on, what a terrifying real life thing is that this happens to people and how it resonates out to everyone around them. To me, that's something I expect from filmmaking. I don't really expect it in my games. And so I don't, God, like I'm even thinking about classic shit that I'm like, wow, like that horror game like stuck with me so much and I loved it, but I don't think it ever hit the emotional depth that Silent Hill 2 did. And I don't know if anything else ever has.
Yeah,
for me.
That's
for
fair.
me. But, I would love for someone, to come into the Discord and tell me like, oh, actually, you missed out on this. And like, you probably really love like the, emotional richness of this. But like, I'm thinking about, all these games, Amnesia, The Dark Descent, PT, Alien Isolation, all of the other Silent Hills, like all of these games that are just kind of like going through my head. And I'm like, these are all great experiences. They're all things that if you were a horror fan, I'd be like,
really tense,
go
really
do it.
good.
Go play Resident Evil. Go play
Sure.
Of course. But no, not a single one has anything like this. The only one that I can actually pause for a second and kind of sort of say it might scratch the surface a little tiny bit would be Layers of Fear.
Yeah, I think you've talked about that.
Yeah, yep. Like it definitely, the painter that you're playing the role of, you're getting like exposed to like kind of the different levels of his disturbing past as you go further and further. And so like, they're definitely kind of embroidering on the idea, I guess. But yeah, nothing like Silent Hill. So yeah, listeners, if you have ever played anything that hit you on an emotional level, a horror game, tell me in our Discord, because I would be very interested to hear if perhaps there's an experience that I'm missing that might, be something I would really, really love to have. So yeah, if you have anything, please do share with me. But
yep.
For now, I remain a Silent Hill 2 fangirl for the rest of my human life. On my deathbed, someone will be like, "What do you remember like most positively?" And I'll be like, "Silent Hill 2."
And then she's gone. That is remarkable. Like using it's how could there not be more games, and obviously like you said there are movies and books and stuff, but like knowing what we know now and knowing what we've all been through and personally and in the world, it's like that is the scariest thing to confront.
No, definitely. I think that if it is anywhere that I've missed it, I bet you it's in indie games. Like, yeah, maybe because like the fact that this game made it honestly to like a big platform, the only thing I can think of is that like basically Silent Hill 1 was a surprise success and they were like, whatever, do whatever you want, like, okay,
that the sophomore masterpiece, that where you and this happens in a lot of art, right? You in a band makes an album and it's good. They break through, they have a hit song, and then the next one is like, here's unlimited resources. Do whatever whatever's in your brain. Let's make it. We want more hits. And then that second album, that second game, that sequel movie. I mean, I don't know. Movies are hit or miss with sequels, but you know what? Games. I feel like game sequels. I don't know if we have enough statistical data to sort of prove this out, but like games are so complicated that like, oh, we made Mario jump and he could go down this pipe. Woo, ship that game. That was a huge. Oh, now we can make a second one. Well, now he can do all sorts of shit. We have that. We have that stuff. Now let's do all the crazy shit we couldn't fit into the first game because technology is better. We learned a lot. We got more money now. Isn't it cool that game sequels are almost always? I don't want to say that. I don't want to say almost always, but like I have had success in my playthroughs of like, I'll just play number 2 because that one's the cool version, the fully realized version of this game. I probably asked you when you were talking about it originally, but like, what is, without spoiling too much and all that, like, what is the premise? Is this a dreamscape? Is this an altered consciousness? Is this real life with supernatural things happening? Like, what is the premise of this world that you are in?
So in the opening of the game, you are standing in a decrepit bathroom by yourself. You're James Sunderland, the main character. And you are looking at yourself in the mirror. You walk outside and you see a simply just beautiful town before you. You're kind of up above it in, like it looks like you've kind of driven in, right? And like you're like, up at the top looking at everything, looking down at everything. Beautiful, lush trees. It looks like it could be in like Oregon somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a little voiceover. And basically, you're like, I got a letter. It's from my wife, but she wanted to meet in Silent Hill in our special place here. And he was like, we used to always come here together. We spent such good time here together. And he was like, it doesn't make sense because she died of that damn disease 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
Like, but is she really here waiting for me? And like your first impression is, oh, this is a man that is, deeply grieving, that has an unexplainable thing that has happened to him. And he doesn't know what to do with it, but he's in such a mental state that he can come back to this place and think, maybe I need to investigate and see, is she really there? Which, like, I think if you start on that foot, thinking of that, if you've ever lost someone, what, like, it's almost like, being in that kind of grief is just, you're so confused and like things just don't, everything is quite distorted. So I think it's possible for you to be like, oh yeah, okay, that's possible, Yep. So what happens is, at first it just looks like a misty mountain town, and he goes down into the town and it's deserted. And soon enough, he starts getting attacked by horrible creatures. And he has a weird reaction to it, which I've talked about in the past. You're like, he doesn't seem very shocked by all of this. And over subsequent playthroughs and thinking about this time and stuff, I have come to the conclusion that it probably makes the most sense that he's in such an altered mental state anyway, that like the things that would take a perfectly sane person would fucking lose their shit. He's just like, yeah, whatever.
What is the meta explanation for where are these creatures? Are they psychological creatures?
Yes.
Like personal demons? Okay, right.
Well, here's one of the things that Silent Hill fans love that has, it's stuff that the creators purposely chose to leave in the dark. But
yeah, and that's great.
Right. Because then you always, have all these people who get to think about what they think it all meant. But so who Pyramid Head is, I'm sure, because
I'm aware of the the visual, but nothing much more than that.
So in this place where, he continues to, be attacked by strange things and there's no people there anymore. And it's just, nothing makes sense. He sees this creature, Pyramid Head, multiple times, and they fight once, but Pyramid Head doesn't actually there's several times where he doesn't really engage with him the way that you would think something trying to murder you would.
Mm-hmm. And
so this is so hard to explain without getting like deep into the details, but I guess the summed up version is that Pyramid Head is a visual representation of James' guilt. And so James comes to the town seeking his wife. The twist in the end of the game, which I feel okay giving away some 20 something odd years after the game, is that she did have something, cancer, it looks like, but it's never really clarified. He cared for her for a long period of time, and then eventually he killed her. Whether to end her suffering or because he couldn't take it anymore or whatever. All of those things are kind of up for the player, right, to decide. But it takes him a really long time to understand that. You don't know that about him until, like, I'd say maybe the 85% through the game mark is when you find out that that's what's happened. And so fans believe that Pyramid Head is a representation of his guilt. Pyramid Head appears as an executioner. So, like, it's thought that perhaps, since he executed his wife, that's a part of it. There's also a scene where you see Pyramid Head raping mannequins. A lot of people think that that's because James had repressed, sexuality feelings, that he, could obviously no longer have sex with his wife because she was dying. Man, it's really complex. I realized I started talking about this in a way as if assuming that you already, like, kind of knew. And I apologize, because I should have explained this from the beginning, but I just didn't.
No.
I started in that place where, like, your brain is starting,
the curse of knowledge.
Yeah, right. So I was like, oh shit. Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah, that's the gist of what's happening. Like, in the entire game, you're kind of, the place that you're in, being in Silent Hill and seeing what's happening around you. Like, I think that, it's supposed to be a reflection of his, like, a physical manifestation of his inner shit. And that's kind of what happens to Angela and what happens to really all the other characters that, you meet in the course of the game. So that was
my next question. Yeah. The other human characters, are they people that he knew from his life?
No.
Or are they are also reckoning with their own stuff?
That's why
separate from him.
Yeah, that's why Angela is going through all the stuff that we talked about earlier. I think she's experiencing the same, her own traumas, right, are, like, coming into reality as physical things.
So it's like a psychological purgatory or hell. Yeah, that's cool. That's it's a really cool device for horror that I'm quite shocked it is not employed more often. And maybe that would be too much of an homage to a classic, but there's gotta be.
I mean, yeah, I don't, people have, loved it and named it for such a very, very long time, but I think it's a really good point. And I never really thought of it, to be honest, before this, that, there really isn't anything like it that I know of, but I sure hope that someone comes in the Discord and tells me I'm wrong. I would love if they did.
Yeah, the link is in the show notes. As always, come join us or send an email. You can do that there. Man, I was compelled when you talked about it the first time, and equally compelled here as well. And I get it. I get why it's there for you. Yeah. I looked at a few images while you were explaining them, and it's some dark stuff.
It really is. But yeah, I'm definitely never getting over that one. But but
nor should you.
Yeah, this is definitely a great one to talk about, I think, and I was looking forward to talking about it. So I'll love to hear what if anybody has anything they want to talk about, about it in the Discord as well. Of course, I'm always excited to hear what people have to say about it.
I'm sure there's going to be fellow fans in there. Last question, unless there's more you want to add to this, but I'm sure I asked you this last time. There was a fan remake, right? Or a fan upgrade to it that you were talking about?
Yeah, when I streamed it, I actually played that version, and it was great because there was Konami did an official HD remake, and that was Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 on the same disc, and it was fucking awful.
It was bad.
They didn't do a good job with the graphical upgrades. I mean, they were okay, but like they didn't do what the stuff that I would have hoped for or expected. They didn't, and then they decided they were going to change the voices.
Oh, wow.
So that was really weird because they were like, well, I'm going to get these new voices. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, I get what you're going for there, but like at the same time, I'm also kind of like, well, the stiltedness of some of those performances, I think, is really important for what we're seeing happening here. So I didn't like that particular part of it being taken away.
People love your game for reasons, right, for a lot of reasons that already existed. So to remix and change that stuff is so complicated.
Yeah, it really, I mean, like, fans were so fucking pissed about that. Yeah. And like to this day, you can still find just some pissed off people related to that. And, it wasn't good. So, no question.
What is the modern way to play it today?
The modern way to play it today is definitely to no, it's not on Steam. That's another thing. It's very fucking hard to get a copy of it. So my recommendation would be that you go check out the person that did the fan remake of it. In order to play it, you will need a original copy of Silent Hill 2 for PC, which is really hard to get. But I have ripped it onto my drive, so I can always find a way to send that over to you. Because otherwise, you'd have to obtain it in illegal ways, and we don't do that here.
So it was released for PC on a disc, but it's not available on any digital storefronts currently?
Not that I know of. I think bizarre. I think maybe if you had let's see, how to play Silent Hill 2. I think if you had let's see. Yeah, people are saying emulation is pretty much your best option. So for purposes of you checking it out and looking at it, I'll drop the link to the enhanced edition fan product. And I think as a person who really cares about quality, frame rate, etc., like, this will be extremely appealing to you. I have no fucking words for a game that I love this much to see it enhanced and I mean, this person just knocked it out of the park, like, in a way that I don't even know how to put into words. I will always replay this person's version, like, that's great, from now on, whenever I do. So I sent that over in our Zencaster chat. But
PS2, you could probably emulate the original PS2 stuff on a phone. It would not be that taxing. I think you could get it done.
No, you definitely could. I mean, as long as you didn't mind playing the non-HD version of it, then yeah.
Yeah, I mean, on a small screen, I think that's probably fine.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Interesting.
Yeah. Although, I'll be honest, I didn't think you were going to say you wanted to play it, so I may have kind of ruined all of the big... I ruined a lot of it, but...
No. Well, we've talked about it at length, but I don't know that I would commit all the way to playing it. But I was just curious, like, if
right, and maybe someone else
clearly has a fandom
wants to play it too. So,
like, the hardcore fans like yourself aren't popping a disc into a PS2 in 2022. Like, how are people accessing this?
Well, yeah, it's funny too, right? Because the fan base is like super angry that that, like, and there is, and I don't know if it's true, but like there's a rumor that Konami like lost like original code or something, so like re-releasing these games would be like impossible. I don't know if it's true or not, but like, it's just. Anyway, I would like you to have time to talk on the show about things that you love, so I'm going to stop talking.
All right. I'm here. I'm ready. I'm prepared. We're not doing predictions, but do you ready to gear up for this number 2?
I'm ready.
She's ready. My number 2 most favoriteest game of all time. Leisure Suit Larry. No, just kidding. That was a misdirect. It was a trick.
I totally thought you were going to really say that.
Could you imagine? It is Subnautica.
Okay, I guess that was going to be on this list too, but I was like, it might be number 1.
Ooh.
So it's not. It's
Not number
not.
one. Not number one. Subnautica is my most recommended game for people who play games. Let's put it that way, because you have to have a handle on your controller and be comfortable playing 3D games. But if you are a video gamer and you're like, what should I play? I need a new game to play. I don't know what to play, and you've never played Subnautica.
Get thy ass to a computer.
Get in there. Computer. It's on all the consoles, and it was ported to Switch. And I think that the Switch port had some bumpiness initially, but I think it's all been straightened out now. I can't speak to how well it is, how smooth it is there, but I've been tempted. Subnautica on mobile. Maybe that's a Steam Deck revisit there, but man. It is my most recommended game because it's got all the things that I love and much, much more. It's got the base building, it's got the survival, it's got the resource gathering, it's got the exploration that I love in most games. But on top of that, a really tremendous environmental story that is told through audio logs and discoveries and finding your way through ancient ruins and things of that sort. So it's one of those lonely games where you are alone on an alien planet, and the story is slowly revealed to you as you explore, and it is just a masterclass in two things. One is gated progression. Like you can go anywhere, but if you're not familiar at all with Subnautica, it is an ocean planet. You are crash landed on an ocean planet. You're on some sort of corporate transport, a giant ship that goes down, and you bail out in an escape pod, and you escape with technologies that allow you to survive on in an ocean world. So you've got like a pod, and you've got a scuba gear, essentially, futuristic scuba gear and multi-tools that allow you to synthesize technologies from the environment, all the normal video gamey stuff that you need for a survival game. And the giant ship that you bailed out of is on the horizon, and it's there, and you're stranded, and it's like basically good luck, and there's like an AI that kind of says, hey, you gotta make sure you eat, and you gotta make sure you have enough water. And so and then from there you can go anywhere and do anything, but it's a water world, and so you can only swim so deep, and you can only travel so far, and you can only do so much before you are going to drown or suffocate or get attacked by creatures that are in the deep.
Yeah.
And so it becomes that survival loop that I love so much, but then also that gated progression, and that's that where you are slowly accumulating, for lack of a better term, like comfort. In any game, and I know you're playing Stardew right now. It's like, man, planting crops on day one sure is a chore. I got to hoe every spot. I got to manually plant it. I got to water everything. And then by year 3, you've got an automated, robot system like watering everything, right, and raking in the cash. And so that like loop and progression of like, okay, I can barely feed myself in the beginning of this game. Like I'm dehydrating constantly. And then towards the middle end, I'm driving around in a submarine that I built myself, and I can go fucking anywhere,
right.
And so as you're uncovered, you can, you go deep, and you're in a cave, and you're like, whoa, there's something really fucking cool down there. And I don't know what it is, but I don't have enough air capacity to get down there and back alive. So you're like, all right, well, now I got to figure out how to craft a vehicle or better air tanks or a better suit or whatever. There are certain areas that are no spoilers, but there are environmental hazards that are like, I physically can't go here until I craft a different kind of suit or whatever.
Right.
And so though that gated progression is really, really well done, because it's like, it's a bit like that Metroid where you're like, oh, I can see the next room, but I can't get there until I get something. And so it's that loop. But then there's this really spectacular sci-fi story layered on top of this survival base building game that is really, really compelling, really, really intriguing about why you crashed in the first place and why you are really not permitted to leave, and what you have to do, whether you're going to spend the rest of your life here, are you going to figure out a way to leave? What are the entities? The main entity is like the corporation that you work for, which is like, not much of a spoiler here, like doesn't give a shit about you. Like there's like this anti-capitalist stuff going on in the narrative too that I enjoy, of like, hey, you're stranded on a planet. Well, good luck. We don't care. Like, you're just an asset to us, and that's the subtext. But like, there are other things, and were there people here before, and there's wildlife here, but what else is going on beneath the surface? And then the two other things that I absolutely adore about this game are the loop of danger and safety, of like feeling so exposed and vulnerable when you are out in the middle of the ocean or trying to go deep under the ocean, and you don't know what the fuck is down there. And that is so terrifying and scary.
That's an IRL fear, to be honest. That's like a moment of like, fuck.
No, that's people who play this have talked about, I forget how you pronounce it, thalassophobia. It's like fear of the deep, of the unknown.
Today I learned I have that.
Like, everyone should have it. Like, it's real. Like, you should be scared of dark water with creatures in it. Like, obviously that's a real thing.
Yeah.
But people have, when I discovered this game, I think it might have still been in early access, but I was cautiously watching people play and reading the subreddit, but being very careful to avoid certain things. And even then I regret I'm glad it brought me to the game, but you should not watch or look at anything. You should just go in. And if you need to like read a guide to figure out how to find something, like, fine, progress. I had to read some guides to like, what am I missing here? I got to solve this or that. But go in cold, because again, so it's that danger, and then it's the safety of like, I have this tiny little pod. I've got a water dispenser, and I've got a place where I can catch some fish, and I can like turn them into food and water, and I've got a bed. And just like going from like pure terror of the deep into this tiny little cozy bed where I can like look out onto the ocean and see what's out there, but I'm safe in here. That coziness, that safety of that is something that gets me in games. And this, there's lots of base building in games, but like being underwater but in your house is something. I don't know what that is, but that is it for me. That alone makes this game top tier.
I think we talked about how I asked you at some point, I think if you consider this to be a horror game.
Yeah, it is.
You said yes.
Because it is. It absolutely is. Yeah, I really don't know that I want to share any more than that, but it is, it's survival horror. It's not psychological, aside from the tenseness of like, I really want to get here and I don't know what's down there, kind of stuff. So it is thriller, it is tense, it is, there are things that will jump and get you, but it's not, your character doesn't really have a backstory or a psychological history or anything like that. You are just the protagonist, figuring out why why you're here and who was here before and what that all means.
But it sounds like that would focus more specifically not on, stuff like a background of the character, but the experience you're having.
Yeah. You're on an alien planet with all the terror, like the existential terror that could come with that.
Yeah.
And you're alone. And so that dread, but also that safety. And then the other thing that is really, I just find really exciting is like that safety of your base is cool, is that thing, but you have to venture out. And so as you develop the technology tree, you are creating different kinds of vehicles, and then you are out in the wilderness, but in a tiny vehicle. And so you're safe, but you're not that safe, but you can get further and go deeper. And there's no limits. So you can, what ends up happening, which I think is really cool, is like, wow, my home base is so far away from the place that I really need to explore or gather resources from. So you can, set up a beacon and then create a second base in a strategic area, and there's no limitations. There's no like, oh, here's the little circle where you can build your, here's zone A's base and zone B's base. No, wherever you go, you can set down roots, and the complexity, you have to account for the pressure of the water. Like the deeper you go, the more structural integrity your base and your vehicles need to have. So you can't just go to the bottom of the ocean and build, Alpha Station. Like you have to have enough resources to really get down there. Like it just, the loop is so, I don't know. It's just so satisfying, and the payoff with the story is really cool. Yeah. So survival, horror, sci-fi story. It just feels so good to swim. Like, I probably said this before. Water levels are not a fun place, but the whole game is the water level, and you're just floating through this 3-dimensional space, in the water at all times. And being on land, actually, there's parts where you need to surface and get onto land, let you make landfall, and that's the least fun part. Like it's actually kind of awkward to be on land when you're swimming around and in vehicles the whole time. So
wow.
Yeah, I can't say enough good stuff. And the sequel is more of the same. I really enjoyed it. I might have mentioned here that when my last computer died, I reinstalled Subnautica Below Zero, and I was like, okay, can't wait to get back into this game. And my save was gone because they did not support cloud saves. Like the only game on Steam I've ever encountered that did not have cloud saves. And it sucked but the second game did not. If that happened to me the first time, that would have been tragic. But I was okay leaving the second one behind. Maybe I'll go back one day. But yeah, goddamn, I love Subnautica so freaking much.
I think in some of our prior conversations about it, I've actually at some point I went and bought it, and then I was like, all right, I'm going to do this thing, and it's sitting here as we speak on my desktop. It's like, wow, well, one day I'm going to get to this. So consider it. Yeah. The fact that it's a horror game in the end, right? Like that's where it goes. I think that's just beyond fascinating to me,
It really is in such good ways.
Of all the fucking things that are scary as shit, you don't need to add any supernatural characters to the sea.
No, exactly.
It's just the sea, and it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
So the game has a constant tension and that push-pull, whatever. But knowing you are not really into the survival crafting, base building stuff. And that it truly is the core loop of the game. So it's hours and hours and hours of resource gathering and synthesizing new technologies, which I love, but the undercurrent of something's going to get me if I'm not careful kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so is that enough to draw you in, or do you think it's really, at the end of the day, not really for you?
I don't know. Like, that's a really good question. And I feel like there's no really good way for me to know until like I, would try. Because I mean, to me, right, it's like I kind of pause for a second and I'm like, okay, well, I do like obviously like collecting resources and build, because I mean, if you think about it, like that's kind of what I'm already doing, playing Stardew Valley right now,
for sure.
So it's like, well, I think it's a different kind of that, a different sort. But I mean, I think I still definitely have found enjoyment in other things, so I think it's possible.
You should look into, because it's such an engrossing big experience, like playing it on the couch is a good way to go, because once you get in the groove, you're just building stuff, so it can be a couch game, listening to podcasts kind of game, so like I guess what I'm wondering is like sitting at the computer desk might not be the best way to play it.
I hardly play anything that way, which is kind of sad if you think about the PC. But we are almost in Steam Deck ship week, so yeah, that's gonna happen.
So that might be the way. I was gonna say, check and see if there's. I don't know if they did an official PS5 version, but like playing the PS4 version on a PS5 might be a good time.
But still, wow, like that would be, I would want to play it on a really big screen, I think. Like my computer screen is large, but not as large as my television, obviously.
Right. So either that or / you already own it on Steam, so wait for the Steam Deck. Like, yeah. Wait on that. Don't play mouse and keyboard is what I'm saying. Don't sit at the desk and play mouse and keyboard. Yeah. You want to kick back on this one.
I just don't think I could. But
man, freaking love that game.
I love it
so much.
I love it. This is good. Very good indeed.
That's all I got.
All right.
That's all I got. Let's get out of here.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, we've only got one left.
Yeah. I might not. I have to think about what yours is. I was going to say,
do you have a guess? Because I'm kind of like, fuck, you said a lot of the games in your list that I was like, maybe those are going to be his number one. So now I'm like, okay, am I forgetting something that like,
I'm having the exact same.
Right. Like, what am I forgetting?
Issue.
Like, and I don't know. So maybe I'll think of it before next week. But at the moment, I'm kind of like, shit, I don't know.
Let's leave it there. The mystery of not knowing. We want to hear from you, so hop on into that Discord, send us an email. I think we've got some Silent Hill fans in there, so please let us know your takeaways, your thoughts. And maybe next week before the final, we're going to ask the Discord more about their top favorite games and why. So maybe we'll have some segments where we share that stuff.
Yeah,
so
I like
stay tuned for that.
Yay!
It's going to be fun. We always love it. For now, we're going to get out of here. Final words.
That's it. I got nothing.
She's got nothing. Goodbye forever until next week. Bye.